Okay, today for the time in Halacha, I want to talk about Tefilas Shav. I don't think I ever did one on Tefilas Shav. It's a topic we may have discussed in other contexts. I remember last Hanukkah, Rabbi Cohen was just talking about a very uplifting moment, but a very, very sad moment happened last Hanukkah. One of my Balabatim told me about the following situation. He was driving home from work and he was listening to WCBS radio, and on the radio they had said that there was a house fire in North Woodmere, and he was concerned that it was his house, and he was like praying that it wouldn't be his house. And then he started thinking, wait a second, am I allowed to pray that this is not my house? As it turned out, it was a house of from Jews, and it did come from Ner Chanukah, and they did not leave the Ner Chanukah lit with, leave the house with the Ner Chanukah lit. They were home and just they caught on a curtain or something, and so a person has to be very, very careful. We can't overstate that enough. That probably, I told people after that, I think it's not enough to be home. Someone should remain in the room with the Ner Chanukah the entire time. Remain in the same room, light a shamus, and then you can even use the Neros, but be in the room with the Neros Chanukah. But anyway, that's beside. I mean, that's most critical. But aside, our topic for today is about Tefilas Shav. Is that an appropriate tefillah to say, knowing already that there is a fire in the neighborhood, to then daven that it shouldn't be your house? So there is a Gemara in Maseches Brachos, really a Mishnah in Maseches Brachos, that tells us Hatzoik l'sha'avar harezu Tefilas Shav, that if a person cries about that which has already happened, that which is over already, that's considered Tefilas Shav. For example, the Mishnah says, if a man's wife is pregnant, and he says a tefillah that after his wife is already pregnant, that the child should be a boy, harezu Tefilas Shav, that is a Tefilas Shav. A guy is coming home, he's traveling home from work, and he hears there's screaming in the city, he sees that something's going on, smoke billowing from a building in the city. And he says, this should not be from my house. Harezu Tefilas Shav, that too is a Tefilas Shav. That also is considered to be a Tefilas Shav. The Gemara asks the question in Brachos Daf Samach Amud Aleph, wait a second, how could you say it's a Tefilas Shav to daven for the change of gender, or for the determination of the gender of a fetus? After all, isn't that what Leah did? So that Leah called the daughter Dinah because Shadana Leah Din Ba'atzma, that Leah made the following cheshbon where she said that Yaakov is going to have 12 shvatim, I already had 6, 4 come from the shvachos. If this baby is a zachar, then Rachel is not even going to be ka'achas ha-shvachos. She's not even going to have as many of the shvatim as one of the shvachos. Miyad neb chalabas. So right away it turned into a girl. Vatikra shema Dina. So the Gemara has different ways of answering that question. The Gemara says either Maisa Nisim is different, and Leah deserved Nisim because she was Leah, and we're not all Leah, or that it was within the first 40 days where the gender is not yet considered to have been determined yet, or something like that. The Gemara gives these various suggestions as to why it is that Leah was allowed to pray. But under normal circumstances, once something has been determined, it's too late to pray. You're not allowed to then pray for it. There is another Gemara that also talks about a similar topic. The Gemara in Bab Metzia, Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph, tells us that Eina bracha mitzuya el b'davar hasamay min ha'ayin. We only find bracha in things that are not visible to the naked eye. And the Gemara says that if a person was madad v'achar kach birech, the Gemara says hischil lamud. If a person begins to measure his silo and he wants to measure how much grain he has, Omer Baruch HaSholeach Bracha B'Kriya Zeh. He could say bracha that Hashem should, tefillah that Hashem should give bracha to that year's crop. But Madad V'Achar Kach Bireich, if he measured it already and then he offers a tefillah that there should be bracha in the kri, Harei Zeh Tefilas Shav. That is considered to be a Tefilas Shav. That is a wasted tefillah, because in a bracha mitzuyla b'davar shakal b'davar madud, we don't find bracha in something that's weighed or in something that's measured or b'davar manu or in something that's counted. Ela b'davar samim ayin, only in that which is hidden from the eye. So this is the definition of a Tefilas Shav. Now, it's important to point out Rabbi Kiva Eger and Shulchan Aruch Or Chaim Siman Reish Lamed quotes in the name of the Sefer Hasidim that Tefilas Shav, one might think, is just, okay, it's a useless tefillah, but you have nothing to lose. So Rabbi Akiva says, no, Tefilas Shav is aser, that there's a protocol in tefillah. As you would imagine, you approach a king, there's a protocol in how to approach a king, what's an appropriate thing to say to a king. You can't go and meet a king and go for a high five. That's not an appropriate way to go greet him. And it's not just oh, what do I have to lose? Might as well high five. No, that's not okay. You have a lot to lose by making such a negative impression. We have to approach HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the right kind of tefillah. And when we start davening for that which has already happened, that is a Tefilas Shav. What is so terrible about a Tefilas Shav? So there are several possibilities of what the problem might be. The Gemara in Shabbos Taf and Gimel and Beis tells us how Hashem always prefers to preserve nature rather than to change nature. The Gemara tells a remarkable story about a man whose wife had died, and he couldn't, and he didn't have anyone to nurse his child. He didn't have enough money to hire a wet nurse. So nasalo nes v'niftechu lo dadin kishnei dadei isha ve'henik espeno. He started to lactate, and he was able to nurse the child by himself. Amr Rav Yosef Vorei Kama Gadol Adam Shenasalo Nes Kazeh. So first Rav Yosef says, wow, what a gadol this guy must be that he has such a miracle happen to him. Amr Abai Adraba Kama Garua Adam Shenasalo Sidrei Bereshis. How terrible it is, how poorly it reflects on him that Hashem had to do a nes for him. So we see that Hashem doesn't like to change the teva, and therefore it could be that when one davens for a change of teva, you're asking Hashem to do something that He doesn't want to do, that He doesn't like to do. A second possibility why it might be problematic is based on Gemara in Shabbos Tav Lamed and Tainis Tav Chaf that Shema Ein Osen Lo Nes, that maybe nes won't happen for you, meaning not everyone is deserving of having a nes happen for them, and it's somewhat presumptuous to assume that Hashem should do a nes for anybody. The person's not supposed to rely on a nes, not supposed to depend on a nes. It's famous tshuva in Igros Moshe Or Chaim Chelek Beis Kuf Yud about buying life insurance, where he says, of course you buy life insurance. You can't rely on a nes that you're going to live forever. Everyone is eventually going to die, and you have to make any normal investments like a regular person should make. Unless you're a tzaddik like Leah, he says. If you're a tzaddik like Leah, then you can rely on a nes, then you can daven for such things. But we're not like that. A third possibility, based on the Gemara in Shabbos and Tainus over there, is that maybe Shema Menaken Lo Mizchuyosav, that let's say Hashem listens to your tefillah and changes the fetus, the gender of the fetus, or changes the measurement of your goren, of the silo. Well, then He just did a nes for you, and that will take away a lot of your zechuyos, and that's a very bad thing. We don't want to lose zechuyos. In fact, the Sefer Baruch Sha'amar explains, the Tartzimim explains in Baruch Sha'amar, the bracha v'agomel misha g'malcha kol tov hui g'malcha kol tov sela is that response to the bracha v'agomel is a bracha to the person that the salvation that he experienced should not be menakem zechuyosah. Hui g'malcha kol tov sela, He should continue to do good for you, because that's not the natural thing. If He already just did a nes for you, naturally you won't continue to have nisim. The question that always bothered me, and I don't really have a solid answer to, is it seems to me that there's a stira between the two Gemaras that we started with. The Gemara in Brachos Tav Samich says that to daven over that which is already there, even though you don't see it, like the fetus, the gender of the fetus, is a Tefilas Shav. Yet the Gemara in Bava Metzia says that even if you have all your grain in your silo, you just haven't measured the silo, that's not yet a Tefilas Shav. It's only once you've measured it that it becomes a Tefilas Shav. Well, doesn't that imply that even though it's already done, but as long as you don't yet know what's done, that it's not called the Tefilas Shav? It seems like a contradiction between the two Gemaras. For some reason, I didn't see anyone that asks that question. It was very, very troubling to me. It seems to be a blatant contradiction. I saw that last year when Rabbi Moshe Taragin was here, I was having a conversation with him, I was asking what he thought about this, and he said to me, you should know, I'm sure that in Shemayim they're laughing at us for asking this question and for not knowing the answer to this question. He said there's definitely something about grain that we city boys don't know. That there's like some fact that we're missing. Maybe yeah, maybe no. I don't know. But that was his comment. I asked around a little bit though to see what other people had to say. In the Sefer Tefilas Shav, he suggested that bracha he inyan kayam bahabriya. That not the Sefer of Tefilas Shav, the author of the Tefilas Shav wrote a letter. He said that a bracha is something that happens in the bria, and that's not a clear miracle, so that would not be considered to be davening for Ma'aseh Nisim. But so person, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "Im yekaimu es hamitzvos, ya bracha mitzvah." You do the mitzvahs, there's going to be bracha in your grain. So to the point that until you measure it, bracha could still happen. That's part of nature, he thinks. Even though it's whatever it is. But it's part of nature that the grain can still grow up until the last up until you count it, as opposed to the change of the gender of a fetus. That's not part of nature. That's a nace. I don't know what makes that part of nature, though. I don't understand why grain growing or becoming more after it's already harvested, why that would be considered expanding on its own, why that would be considered part of nature. I saw in the Dirshu Mishabura, they quote the same thing from Rav Chaim Kanievsky, that the peros mashminim, that it can swell, it can grow. So why can it only swell before you count it and not after you count it? I don't really understand. What that's based on. Rav Zilberstein thought that a Goren Sheis Rabbah is not such an obvious nace, because also sometimes peros mashminim, sometimes peros swell. Again, I don't know why that would happen only before you count and not after you count. If it's something that's not a nace, so then what's the problem with davening for that after you've already counted it? I don't really have a good understanding of why that would be the case. I don't really have a clear understanding of why of how to deal with the stira. Of course, the major kasha that everyone does ask about davening for nisim is that there's a Ramah in Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Pei Zayin Sif Dalet and Tafresh Pei Beis Sif Aleph that says to say Arachmanu Yasalon Nisim Kamo Shasalav Asinu B'Yamim B'Zman Hazeh on Chanukah. If you forget all the nisim, so that's what you say. That's so you daven Hashem should do nisim for us like He did for our forefathers. When in the times of the Chanukah miracle. So the question is, how are we allowed to do that? That's also davening for a nes. So that there are like 6 different answers to. The Bukhar Shar says you could daven for nisim that apply to the whole tzibur as long as it's not a personal nes. Bukhar Shar also writes, it's called in Shari Tshuva or Chaim Kuf Pei Zayin Sivkat and Gimel, that as long as it doesn't define nature, you could daven for a nes that doesn't define nature. Meaning nes can mean 2 things. Nes can mean something that completely defies nature, like the nes shemen, or a remarkable event, a remarkable coincidence, or a remarkable event, like the Nes of the Milchama. It doesn't make sense that David's going to beat Goliath. It doesn't make sense that we should be able to defeat a stronger enemy, but remarkably it could happen. The rest of the world will look at it and will not look at it as defying nature. So that's the kind of nes that we could daven for. Not for the nes pachshemen kind of nes, where it's completely defying nature, but a nes that's just remarkable, that's just like unbelievable. The Yeshua Yaakov Nor Chaim Tafresh Pei Beis says that if you're davening for the nes purely to increase kvod shemayim and not for any personal need, that's okay, and that's why we're allowed to say the Sarachman. Rav Sternbach writes in Moadim Zman Uchel Beisim Kuf Mem Ches that if you're not davening for a specific miracle, you're just davening for nisim to happen in general, that would make it permissible. The Bnei Yissaschar writes in Shabbos Ches Chav Beis that it's okay at a nes ratzon to daven for a nes. That Chanukah is a time that's malumad b'nisim. It's a time that's infused with miraculous abilities. And the Yinayim L'Mishpat says that miracles that are predestined one can daven for, and we can assume that we're davening for those nisim that Hashem has promised us for many, many years. The nisim that are going to bring about the ultimate goal of Yeshua. That's what we're really davening for, and that you're allowed to daven for the nisim that are already promised that Hashem's going to bring. So we're allowed to daven for such things. But there's just a little bit about Tefilas Shav, davening for nisim, and as it relates to Chanukah in particular.
In the Smoky Mountains, it's not just about getting away. It's about getting together to zoom across a zip line, splash down at water parks, shop till you drop, and say hello to the statue of our hometown hero, Dolly Parton. This year, discover the thrill of visiting the Smokies and reconnect with those you love the most in Sevierville, Tennessee. Learn more. Visit Sevierville.com. That's visit SEVIERVILLE.com.